two explanations for Amy Bradley's disappearance have persisted since the morning she vanished. The first, she went overboard. An accident, a fall from a deck in the early morning hours of March 24th, 1998, into the waters between Curacao and Aruba. No foul play, no third party, a tragedy with no one responsible. The second, she walked off. A voluntary disappearance, a young woman who chose, for reasons of her own, to leave her family on a Caribbean cruise and never come back. Not a victim, a choice. These are simple explanations, the ones that require no conspiracy, no criminal actor, no uncomfortable question about what the cruise line knew or what the FBI pursued. They are the explanations that allow the case to be closed without anyone being held accountable. This episode examines both, not through emotion, not through the family's certainty, not through the cumulative weight of everything this series has established, but through professional benchmarks. What does the physical record tell us about the overboard theory? What do verified voluntary disappearances actually look like? And how does Amy's case compare? What does the evidence support, and what does it not? By the end of this episode, these theories will have been evaluated on their own merits, and none of them will have survived the explanation. This is the Midnight Mystery Archive and Episode 9 of our 12-part Amy Bradley series. This is Accident or Walk-Off. To evaluate the overboard theory, you have to understand what going overboard from a cruise ship actually involves, physically, mechanically, and evidentially. Rhapsody of the Seas is a Vision-class vessel. She entered service in 1998 and carries approximately 2,040 passengers across 12 decks. Her outer decks are standard for the class: open promenades, pool decks, and balcony areas protected by railings. In 1998, those railings were not subject to the 42-inch minimum height requirement that the Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act later mandated in 2010. SOLAS, the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, did not then and does not now specify a single harmonized railing height. The standard in 1998 was whatever the shipbuilder and flag state approved. Getting over those railings is not as simple as popular imagination suggests. But let's go further than general observation, and let's look at the actual physics. The Bradley family's cabin on the Rhapsody of the Seas was on the 8th deck. Based on the dimensions of that specific cabin type, the balcony railing sat at 3 feet 8 inches high. Amy was about 5'6". The center of gravity for a woman is approximately 55% of her standing height from the ground, which places Amy's center of gravity at roughly 36 inches above the deck. That means her center of gravity sat approximately 8 inches below the top of that railing. Theory 1, an accidental fall. An accidental stumble, a trip, a loss of balance, generates approximately 30 joules of energy. For Amy's center of gravity to clear the top of that railing, she would need to overcome that 8-inch differential against gravity while generating sufficient forward momentum. The energy required is roughly 4 times what a stumble produces, approximately 120 joules. More importantly, the trajectory of a stumble or trip is forward and down, not up and over. The physics of an accidental fall do not produce the arc required to clear that railing. They produce someone hitting the railing, not going over. Theory 2, an intentional jump. The cabin had a balcony directly below on the deck beneath. For Amy to have cleared that lower balcony, which she must have because no impact on it was ever reported, she would have needed to propel herself approximately 6 feet out horizontally in under 3/4 of a second. The launch speed required is roughly 8 feet per second. For context, that is the equivalent of a world-class athlete performing a standing broad jump. Amy was definitely athletic. She was not a world-class athlete in any documented sense. And even world-class athletes do not perform at their peak when they've been drinking. The most liberal athletic performance data suggests approximately 1 in 10 men and 1 in 100 women could achieve that kind of explosive horizontal launch from a standing position under ideal circumstances. Factor in the alcohol, and that number falls well below 1%. Factor in the additional constraint that the clearance between the top of the railing and the balcony above was only 3 feet 3 inches, meaning she would have had to launch from a crouched position, dramatically reducing available power, and the physics become effectively impossible. Then there's theory 3, using furniture as a launch platform. Now, there is a report from the cruise line that a table was positioned against the railing. The standard tables on a Vision Class balcony in 1998 had a base of less than 18 inches. An 18-inch base under a person's weight, pushed against a railing for a launch, does not provide a stable platform. It slides. The most likely outcome of attempting that maneuver is the table giving way, sending the person forward into the railing face first, which did not happen because Amy was not on the balcony and was never seen with facial injuries. 3 accidental and intentional overboard scenarios. All 3 are eliminated by the physics before Mentar's search conclusion even enters the picture. None of those conditions are documented in Amy's case. There is no record of her being intoxicated, at least fully. There is no report of an impact, a sound, a struggle near a deck railing. There is no witness who reported hearing a splash or seeing a person go into the water. There was no Oscar code, the maritime signal for man overboard, announced on the ship that morning. That last point deserves specific attention. When someone is observed going overboard, or when a ship's systems detect it, the Oscar code is announced immediately, and search and rescue procedures are initiated. No Oscar code was announced on the Rhapsody of the Seas on March 24, 1998. That absence doesn't prove Amy didn't go overboard. Unobserved overboard incidents do happen, but it means there was no contemporaneous evidence that she did. The most authoritative statement on the overboard theory does not come from an analyst or an attorney. It comes from the man who ran the search. John Mentar was the chief of harbor police in Curacao. In the Netflix show Amy Bradley is Missing, he described the search operation in direct terms. The Marines, the Venezuelan Coast Guard, and the Navy all covered the corridor between Curacao and Aruba. Boats and helicopters were out. He called it the biggest search the island had ever seen. And his conclusion was unambiguous. Given the currents, the wind, and the wave height. If Amy had entered that water, something would have washed ashore. Not necessarily a body, but something. Clothing, some physical trace. And nothing was found. Mentar went further. He said directly, if she came off that ship, fell or otherwise, they would have recovered a body. The waters have sharks, he noted, but a shark does not consume a person completely. Something would have washed ashore. In his own words, he described it as strange. The chief of harbor police who ran the search, not the Bradley family, not a private investigator, not me, a podcast host, described what the absence of physical evidence in that water means. It means Amy was not in it. David Carmichael, who saw a woman he identified as Amy on a beach in Curacao 5 months after she disappeared, put it plainly. She got off the ship. He wouldn't have seen her on a beach if she hadn't. The overboard theory requires that the search was wrong, that Mentar's professional assessment was wrong, that the Marines and the Coast Guard and the Navy missed something. The theory requires that a body or any physical trace could have disappeared entirely from those waters without a trace. The physical record does not support that requirement. The walk-off theory requires a different sort of analysis. It's not a physical question. It is a behavioral one. And behavioral questions have certain benchmarks. Let's establish a couple things. People do voluntarily disappear. And in fact, it happens more than most people realize. They leave relationships, escape financial pressures, abandon lives that have become unbearable. In some cases, they build new identities. In some cases, they resurface years later. Voluntary disappearance is a documented, studied phenomenon with a consistent behavioral profile. What that profile looks like in verified cases is something like this. Financial preparation. People who voluntarily disappear almost universally make financial arrangements before they go. They access accounts, they move money, establish resources for the life they're planning. The spontaneous walk-off with nothing is possible but rare. The planned walk-off leaves a financial footprint. Then there's pre-departure behavioral changes. Verified voluntary disappearances are typically preceded by observable changes in behavior, withdrawal from relationships, unusual planning activity, conversations that suggest a coming change. The people closest to the person who disappears almost always, in retrospect, identify signals they didn't recognize at the time. Communication patterns afterward. They exist. People who choose to disappear typically do eventually make contact, directly or indirectly. Not always, but the complete silence of a voluntary disappearance, sustained across decades without any trace, is statistically unusual. Then there's a destination or a plan. Walking off a cruise ship in a Caribbean port in 1998 with no money, no documents, no prepared identity, no one waiting, and no plan is not a disappearance. It is an abandonment with no viable path forward. Voluntary disappearances work because the person who disappears has prepared somewhere to go. Apply those benchmarks to Amy's disappearance. How about financial preparation? There was none. There is no record of unusual financial activity before the cruise. No accounts were accessed. No money was moved. No resources were established. Amy was a young woman on a family vacation, working as a server, and recently promoted at a Richmond restaurant, planning to return to school for a master's degree. She had plans for her birthday in New York with Tom. She had a dog named Bailey whose care structured her daily schedule. Her financial and personal life showed no indicators of someone planning to leave it. How about pre-departure behavioral changes? Again, the answer is none. Tom, who spent the months before the cruise with her, has said there was nothing. The family has said there was nothing. The people who knew her best have never identified a single indicator, in retrospect, that she was planning to vanish. That is not a family in denial. This is a consistent account from multiple independent people who knew her in different contexts. How about communication afterward? There's none. In 28 years, Amy Bradley has not made contact with her family. She has not sent a letter, not made a call, not left any signal. If she chose to leave and chose never to contact the people who have spent nearly 3 decades searching for her, that silence is itself a data point. The walk-off theory requires that she not only chose to disappear, but chose to watch her family's public suffering for 28 years without ever indicating she was alive. And the people who know Amy know that would not happen. Did she have a destination or a plan? None documented. She was on a cruise in international waters. She had no prepared identity, no documented contact on the island, no financial resources to stage a new life. The walk-off theory applied to the specific circumstances of March 24, 1998, requires a level of planning and preparation for which there is no evidence whatsoever. The walk-off theory does not survive the application of its own benchmarks to Amy's case. So why do these theories persist? All of these theories have been eliminated by the evidence, but they still linger. And the answer is not primarily about evidence, it is about psychology. Human beings are uncomfortable with uncertainty. An unresolved case, a missing person who has been missing for 28 years with no confirmed outcome, produces a kind of cognitive discomfort. We are wired to seek resolution. We are wired to find patterns and explanations. And when the true explanation is complex or it implicates powerful institutions and remains unsolved, the mind is drawn to simpler alternatives even when the evidence doesn't support them. The overboard theory is attractive because it requires no villain. It is tragedy without malice. A young woman fell. It was terrible. No one is responsible. The family can grieve, and the world can move on. The walk-off theory is attractive because it resolves the uncertainty differently. She isn't missing, she left. She is somewhere living a life she chose. The family's suffering becomes, in this framing, a misunderstanding rather than an injustice. No crime was committed. No one needs to be held accountable. Both theories perform the same psychological function. They close the loop. They provide the resolution that the actual evidence cannot. What the evidence provides instead is the elimination of both simple explanations and the uncomfortable space that creates. If Amy didn't go overboard and didn't walk off, then what happened to her requires a different explanation. One that involves other people. One that involves choices made by those people. One that involves 28 years of those choices remaining unexposed and the people held unaccountable. That is the explanation the evidence points toward. It is also the hardest one to sit with, and it is the one the next 2 episodes of this series will examine. If you have information about Amy Bradley's disappearance, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. Tips can be submitted anonymously, and the FBI reward is now $100,000. For more on Amy and the family's ongoing search, visit amybradleyismissing.com. During the full run of this series, 100% of our InvisiWare commissions will go directly to the Bradley family's GoFundMe, which is used to continue their own investigation. Links to the InvisiWare website are in the show notes. Follow the Midnight Mystery Archive on X and join our official Facebook group. Also, a rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify goes a long way in helping us grow our audience and bring new ears to Amy's story. In this episode, 2 theories were eliminated, not through emotion or advocacy, through the physical record, through the behavioral benchmarks, and through the documented testimony of the people who were closest to the case when it happened. The waters between Curacao and Aruba found nothing. Amy's life showed none of the markers that voluntary disappearances produce. The simplest explanations don't fit. What remains is harder, and we'll get to it. Next time on the Midnight Mystery Archive, coercion, trafficking, or opportunity. The most sensitive episode in this series. What verified trafficking and coercion cases actually look like? What evidence would exist if those theories apply to Amy's case? And what this episode is and is not claiming. This has been the Midnight Mystery Archive and episode 9 of our Amy Bradley series. Until next time.